Imagine living your entire life, making friends, going to school, and even starting your own family, all under a name that wasn't yours. For most missing children, the mystery begins with a disappearance, and the family is left searching. But in these cases, the children grew up in plain sight. They went to school. They made friends. They had a name, a home, and someone they called mother. And for years, sometimes decades, they had no idea they had ever been taken at all. Story number 1. The Case of Paul Fronczak and Kevin Baty. Paul Joseph Fronczak was born in Chicago on April 26, 1964. His parents, Dora and Chester Fronczak, had already experienced loss before he was born. A year earlier, they had lost their child shortly after birth, and when Paul arrived healthy at Michael Reese Hospital, Dora held him with the kind of relief only grieving parents truly understand. For a short time, everything seemed normal. Dora fed him. She believed he was safe, but the next morning, a woman in a nurse's uniform entered Dora's hospital room and claimed the doctor needed the baby for an examination. Dora, exhausted and trusting, handed him over. The woman left the room with baby Paul, and she never came back. Hours passed before the hospital understood what had happened. By then, the woman was gone, and so was the baby. The kidnapping led to one of the largest searches Chicago had ever seen. Police, federal agents, and even postal workers were brought into the effort. Homes were searched. Tips were followed. The story appeared in newspapers across the country. Dora and Chester pleaded for their son to be returned, but no one brought him home. The baby had vanished from a hospital, in daylight, from his mother's arms, and for nearly 2 years there was no real answer. Then, in 1966, the Fronczaks were told there might finally be news. Months earlier in Newark, New Jersey, a little boy had been found abandoned in a stroller outside a shopping center. No one came forward to claim him. He was placed with a foster family and given the name Scott McKinley. But investigators noticed something. The abandoned toddler looked like he could be the missing baby from Chicago. At the time, there was no DNA testing. There were no fingerprints or footprints from the baby that could prove anything with certainty. There was only a photograph taken when he was born, and the hope that maybe, after almost 2 years, the Fronczak family had been given a miracle. They had to make a choice based on hope, not proof. Dora and Chester traveled to New Jersey. They met the child, and Dora said he was her son. The boy was taken back to Chicago. He was adopted by the Fronczaks. And from that point on, Scott McKinley became Paul Joseph Fronczak. For the family, it was supposed to be the end of the nightmare. Their missing child had been found. The newspapers had their happy ending. The grieving parents had a son again. But inside that ending, there was one quiet uncertainty that never fully disappeared. The boy raised as Paul Fronczak grew up loved, but also overprotected. When he was around 10 years old, he found old newspaper clippings hidden in the family home. The articles told the story of a stolen baby, a mother begging for his return, a kidnapping that had once shocked the country. At first, Paul thought that he had simply discovered the dramatic story of his own early life. But when he asked his mother about it, the subject closed quickly. He was told that yes, he had been kidnapped. They had found him, they loved him, and that was all he needed to know. So, Paul stopped asking, at least out loud. But the question stayed with him. As he got older, he noticed things that did not quite fit. He didn't look like his parents. He didn't look like his younger brother. He felt different in ways he could not explain. And when he later became a father himself, even simple questions like family medical history became difficult, because Paul did not actually know where his own body came from. For years, he wondered if he really was the baby taken from the Michael Reese Hospital. Then one day, in 2012, he finally asked his parents to take a DNA test with him. At first, they agreed. Then they changed their minds and asked him not to send the samples. For Paul, it was no longer only curiosity. It was the question his entire life had been built around. So he sent them anyway. And when the results came back, they didn't just create doubt. They ended the story he had been told. Paul Fronczak was not biologically related to Dora and Chester Fronczak. He was not their stolen baby. For almost 50 years, he had lived under the name of another missing child. The revelation reopened everything. If he was not Paul Fronczak, then who was he? And where was the real Paul? The FBI reopened the kidnapping case. At the same time, genealogists began working to identify the man who had been raised as Paul. Their search led to a different family and a different missing child. In 2015, Paul learned that his birth name was Jack Rosenthal. He had been born in New Jersey, and he had not disappeared alone. He had a twin sister named Jill. Like him, Jill had also vanished from the family story. Relatives later described a troubled home, and there were allegations that the twins had been neglected or mistreated. But what happened to Jill was never fully answered. For the man raised as Paul Fronczak, the discovery gave him one truth while opening another wound. He was Jack Rosenthal, but his twin sister was still missing, and the real Paul Fronczak was also somewhere else. For years, the search continued. Then, in 2019, another piece finally surfaced. A man in Michigan named Kevin Ray Baty was linked through DNA to the Fronczak family. The DNA showed that Kevin was the real Paul Joseph Fronczak. The newborn taken from Michael Reese Hospital had survived. He had grown up under another name. He had become a father, and had lived his entire life without knowing who he really was. But the answer came painfully late. By the time Kevin's true identity was discovered, he was seriously ill with cancer. Dora Fronczak did get to speak with him by phone. After more than 50 years, the mother who had handed her baby to a woman in a nurse's uniform finally heard her son's voice. They planned to meet in person, but Kevin became too sick. And then, the pandemic made everything harder. In April 2020, Kevin Ray Baty died. He was 56 years old. The reunion that should have happened decades earlier never truly came. There were no clear legal consequences. The woman who took baby Paul from the hospital was never publicly identified. No one has been convicted for the kidnapping. And the full truth of how Paul Joseph Fronczak became Kevin Ray Baty remains incomplete. The man raised as Paul still carries the name that was given to him by mistake. He is biologically Jack Rosenthal. He is legally and publicly known as Paul Fronczak. And through his search, he helped return the truth to the family whose name he had carried for most of his life. But the case did not end cleanly. The stolen baby was found but died before he could fully return. The abandoned boy found his identity, but also learned he had a missing twin sister. And Dora Fronczak got only 2 phone calls with the son she lost as a newborn. In many missing child cases, the mystery is where the child went. In this case, the mystery was also who everyone had become. A baby stolen from a hospital became Kevin Baty. An abandoned toddler became Paul Fronczak. And behind both names were children who had no way of knowing the lives they were living had begun with someone else's loss. Paul Fronczak spent most of his life searching for his real identity. In the next case, a family spent more than 70 years searching for a little boy who vanished from a park in California. And somehow, against all odds, they finally found him. The case of Luis Armando Albino. In most missing child cases, the first hours become the most important. The search begins, police ask questions. Neighbors look through streets, parks, and nearby water. And the family waits, hoping that the child is still close enough to be found. But in the case of Luis Armando Albino, the truth had already moved far away. He was only 6 years old when he disappeared from Oakland, California. For more than 70 years, his family kept his memory alive. His mother kept hoping. His brother kept remembering. And generations later, A niece who had grown up hearing his name would become the person who finally found him. Luis Armando Albino was born in Puerto Rico. By 1951, his family had moved to Oakland, California, where they were living in the West Oakland area. He was one of several children in the Albino family. To the outside world, he was an ordinary little boy. But inside his family, he was part of a close household that had already gone through the upheaval of moving from one place to another, trying to build a new life. On February 21st, 1951, Luis was playing at Jefferson Square Park with his older brother Roger. Roger was 10 years old. Luis was 6. It should have been a normal afternoon. 2 brothers near home, a park, children playing. Then a woman approached them. She spoke to Luis in Spanish. She told him she would buy him candy. To a 6-year-old child, it would not have sounded dangerous. It would have sounded simple. A kind adult, a promise of something sweet. Luis went with her. Roger watched what was happening and later told investigators what he had seen. But by the time the adults understood that something was wrong, Luis was gone. The woman had taken him, and the ordinary afternoon had become a disappearance that would last for more than 7 decades. At first, the search focused around Oakland. Police searched the area. Soldiers from a nearby army base helped. The Coast Guard searched waterways. San Francisco Bay and nearby bodies of water were checked, because investigators considered the possibility that Luis had somehow fallen in and drowned. But Roger had already given them another explanation. He said a woman had taken his brother. He repeated that story, and he kept repeating it. But in 1951, without cameras, without modern alerts, and without the kind of child abduction systems that exist today, there was little investigations could do. Once the trail disappeared, Luis had not drowned. He had not wandered off. He had been taken out of California. According to later reports, the woman brought him to the East Coast, where he ended up being raised by another family as if he were their own child. And for the Albino family, all that was left was absence. His mother, Antonia, never stopped believing that her son might still be alive. She kept photographs of him, newspaper clippings. She spoke about him for the rest of her life. In the family home, Luis was not erased. He was missing, but he was still present. His name was still known, and his face still remembered. His older brother Roger, the boy who had been there the day Luis disappeared, carried that memory into old age. For years, the family searched in different ways. They looked for answers. They held on to the hope that maybe Luis had survived. But time kept passing. The little boy in the photograph became, in their minds, a teenager, then a young man, then a man old enough to have his own family. But there was still no confirmation. No phone call, no breakthrough with the police, no reunion. Antonia Albino died in 2005. She never saw her son come home. But her belief that he still might be alive did not disappear with her. It stayed inside the family. Years later, that memory reached her granddaughter, Alida Alekin. Alida had grown up knowing that there was an uncle who had been taken. This was not a distant rumor. It was part of the family's emotional history. There had always been a missing boy. There had always been a question. Then, in 2020, Alida took an online DNA test. At first, it wasn't part of any major investigation. It was just something many people do out of curiosity. But the results showed a match she did not recognize. A man living on the East Coast appeared as a close biological relative. The match was strong enough to raise the possibility that almost felt impossible. Could this man be Luis? Could the child taken in 1951 still be alive? Alida tried to make contact, but at first, nothing came of it. The match remained there unresolved. But she did not forget it. She began comparing what she could find. Old family photographs, newer images, facial resemblance. The shape of a face that seemed to echo people she already knew. Then she searched through newspaper archives and gathered old reports about the kidnapping. The more she looked, the harder it became to dismiss the possibility. In early 2024, She brought what she had found to the Oakland Police Department. From there, the case moved beyond family suspicion. Police, the FBI, and the California Department of Justice became involved. Lewis was located on the East Coast. DNA samples were taken and compared with surviving family members. And then, finally, after 73 years, the answer came back. The man indeed was Luis Armando Albino. The 6-year-old boy taken from the park in 1951 had survived. He had grown up. He had become a father and a grandfather. He had served in the United States Marine Corps during Vietnam. He worked as a firefighter. He had lived an entire life on the other side of the country, while his family kept searching for him. In June 2024, Lewis returned to California to meet the relatives who had never stopped carrying his name. Among them was Roger, the older brother who had been with him in the park, the boy who had watched him leave with a stranger, the brother who had spent a lifetime remembering that day. After 73 years, the two brothers were finally in the same room again. They were no longer children. Most of their lives had already passed. Their mother was gone. The childhood they should have shared could not be restored. But they still had one small piece of time left. And for a family that had waited through generations, even that mattered. Roger died only a few months after the reunion, which made the whole thing feel even more fragile. If the DNA test had happened later, if Alita had stopped searching, if the match had been ignored, the brothers may never have seen each other again. The timing gave them something. The case of Luis Armando Albino does not end with a full explanation. The woman who took him from the park was not brought to trial. The complete details of what happened after the abductions are still not publicly known, and Luis himself has chosen to keep much of his life private. The investigation remains open. Luis Armando Albino disappeared as a child and spent most of his life unaware that another family had been searching for him. But in the next case, the missing boy eventually began searching for the truth himself. The case of Orey Steinmann. For Orey Steinmann, the truth did not arrive through a police knock at the door. It did not begin with a DNA test, and it did not come from a confession. It began with something ordinary, a teenager sitting at a computer typing his own name into a search engine. At the time, Orey was 17 years old and living in California. He had grown up with his mother, Giselle Golderalt, and the story he knew about his past was simple. His father was not part of his life. He had been left behind. That was the version he had been given. But when Orey searched his name online, he found something that did not make sense. It was a missing children's website. On it was a photograph of a little boy. The boy was 3 years old, and the name attached to the photo was his, Orey Steinmann. According to the listing, the child had disappeared from Red Deer, Alberta, Canada, years earlier. For most people, searching their name online brings up ordinary things: a school record, a social profile, sports result. For Orey, it brought up a life he had never been told about. Before California, Orey had lived in Canada with his father, Rodney Steinmann. His parents were separated, and Rodney had custody. In May of 1989, Orey's mother was allowed to take him for a court-ordered weekend visit. It was supposed to be temporary. A short visit, a return date, a child going back to the parent who had custody. But Orey was not returned. His mother disappeared with him. Authorities later believed that Giselle first took Orey to Mexico. After that, she eventually moved to the United States. By 1995, she was living in the Los Angeles area. And there, Orey grew up, not as a child who believed he was missing, but as a child who believed the life around him was simply his life. That is what makes parental abduction cases so complicated. The child may not be hidden in a basement or locked away from the world. They may go to school, make friends, and live in a normal-looking home. But underneath that ordinary life is a story controlled by someone else. In Orey's case, the missing parent became the abandoning parent, and the parent who had taken him became the only stable truth he knew. For years, that story held. He did not know his father in Canada had been looking for him. He did not know his childhood photo was still listed as part of a missing child case. He didn't know that the name he used every day was also the name on a public appeal, asking where he had gone. Then, as a teenager, he found the listing, and the past no longer stayed hidden. After seeing the missing child page, Orey told a teacher. The teacher contacted police in LA, and authorities checked the information with Canadian police in Red Deer. The details matched. The teenager in California was the little boy who had disappeared from Alberta 14 years earlier. The discovery did not come through a dramatic chase. It came through a search box, a school conversation, and a teacher who understood that this was not just a strange coincidence. After the information was confirmed, U.S. Marshals went to Giselle Goderalt's house in the San Fernando Valley. She was arrested on a Canadian warrant. By then, the case had crossed countries and years. Canada, Mexico, the U.S. A custody dispute had become an international disappearance. But for Orey, the arrest was not simple. The woman being taken into custody was not a stranger. She was his mother. The same woman authorities said had abducted him was also the woman who had raised him. That was the emotional knot at the center of the case. Legally, Orey had been taken from the parent who had custody, but emotionally, he had grown up inside the life created by that act. After his mother's arrest, Orey was placed in foster care while authorities handled the case. His father, Orey Steinmann, wanted to see him. For Rodney, the discovery meant that the son he lost was alive. But Orey was not returning as a small child from 1989. He was almost an adult. He had his own memories, his own loyalties, and his own confusion. They had both lived through the same disappearance from opposite sides. For Rodney, those years were a search. For Orey, they were childhood. Giselle Goderalt was eventually extradited to Canada. In 2005, she was sentenced to 2 months in prison for child abduction. The sentence was short compared to the length of the disappearance, but the legal outcome was only one part of the story. The deeper consequence was what Orey had to absorb, that the story of his life had been changed before he was old enough to question it. Orey Steinmann's case stands apart because of how quietly the truth surfaced. Not an anonymous confession, no DNA match, no public appeal finally answered, just a teenager typing his own name into the internet and finding a missing child. He wasn't looking for a lost person, he was looking for himself, and that's exactly what he found. Orey Steinmann found the truth by searching his own name online, but in the next case, the truth did not come from a search engine. It came from a feeling that something about her life, her family, and even her own face did not fully make sense. The case of Carlina White. For Joy White and Carl Tyson, the night began as an ordinary emergency. Their baby daughter Carlina was less than 3 weeks old. She had a fever, and like any frightened young parents, they took her to the hospital. It was August 4th, 1987. Carlina was brought to Harlem Hospital in New York City, where she was admitted for treatment. At that point, there was no reason to think that danger was anywhere outside of the illness itself. Her parents believed they had taken her to the safest place they could. But sometime in the early hours of the next morning, hospital staff discovered that Carlina was gone. Her hospital bed was empty. The baby girl who had been brought in for a fever had vanished from inside the hospital. And with that, a simple medical emergency became one of the most painful missing child cases in New York history. In the first hours after Carlina disappeared, investigators believed someone had walked out of the hospital with her. Reports later described a woman who had been seen around the hospital, appearing to be dressed like a nurse. To Carlina's parents, the detail made the situation even more unbearable. Their daughter had not disappeared from a street or a park or a playground. She had been taken from a place where she was supposed to be protected. Joy White and Carl Tyson searched for answers. Their family waited. Police investigated. A reward was offered. But Carlina did not come home. Days passed, then months, then years. For her biological family, Carlina remained frozen in time as an infant, a baby taken from a hospital crib, a child whose birthday came every year without her. As the years passed, Joy and Carl were left with the kind of uncertainty that never really ends. They didn't know if their daughter was alive, or where she had been taken. They didn't know whether the person raising her had changed her name and hidden her in plain sight. That, unfortunately, is exactly what had happened. After the abduction, Carlina was taken to Bridgeport, Connecticut. The woman who raised her was Anugeta Petway, also known as Ann Petway. To the outside world, the child was not Carlina White. She was Nedra Nance, or Nettie, and for years, that was the life she knew. She had a name, a home, a woman she believed was her mother. But as Nettie got older, small things began to feel wrong. There were no proper records, no clear paperwork, no birth certificate that made sense, no simple explanation for the gaps in her identity. At first, these may have seemed like ordinary family complications, but over time they became harder to ignore. When Nettie asked Ann Petway for identification documents, Petway could not provide them. Instead, she gave her an explanation that only created more questions. She told Nettie that she had been given to her by a woman who used drugs. That story was supposed to explain the missing paperwork, but to Nettie, it did not close the matter. It opened it. Because if the woman who raised her was not really her mother, the question became much bigger. Who was she? Where had she come from? And was someone, somewhere, still looking for her? By 2011, Nettie began searching missing children records. She contacted the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and asked about missing children from the late 1980s. Then she saw a photo, a missing baby from 1987. The child's name was Carlina White. The baby in the picture looked like her own baby photos. The more she looked, the more the pieces seemed to line up. The missing child had disappeared from Harlem Hospital. Nettie had grown up with missing documents and unanswered questions. And now, for the first time, there was a possible name for the feeling she had carried for years. She contacted the family connected to the missing child. Joy White, Carlina's biological mother, received the possibility almost like something impossible returning from the past. After more than 2 decades, a young woman was saying she might be the baby who had disappeared from Harlem Hospital. But after so many years, hope alone was not enough. They needed proof. Between January 4th and January 7th, 2011, investigators collected DNA samples from Nedra, Joy White, and Carl Tyson. Then, on January 18th, the results came back. The DNA was a match. Nedra Nance was Carlina White. After 23 years, the missing baby from Harlem Hospital had been found. And in one moment, 2 lives collided. The life she had grown up with, and the life that had been taken from her before she was old enough to remember it. For her biological parents, the confirmation was overwhelming. Their daughter was alive. The baby they had lost had grown into a woman. But the reunion was not simple. Carlina was not returning as the infant they remembered. She was a 23-year-old woman after all. She had memories, attachments, confusion, and a name she had lived with for most of her life. She had also grown up calling someone else mother. That is what made the case so painful. Carlina had been found alive, but the years were still gone. No DNA test could return the childhood her parents missed. No court sentence could give Carlina back the life she should have had. After the DNA confirmation, attention turned to Ann Petway. On January 23, 2011, Petway surrendered to authorities in Bridgeport, Connecticut. According to federal authorities, she admitted that she had gone to Harlem Hospital, taken the baby by train to Bridgeport, and raised her as her own. She also admitted that she tried to create a fake birth certificate. Petway later said she had struggled to have children and suffered miscarriages. But whatever pain existed in her own life, it had only been answered by creating pain in another family's life. In February 2012, Ann Petway pleaded guilty to 1 count of kidnapping. Later that year, she was sentenced to 12 years in prison. In court, Carlina's parents spoke about what had been taken from them. Not only a child, but birthdays, first words, school years, ordinary days, the small memories that make up a life. Carlina White's case is often described as remarkable because she solved so much of it herself. She followed the cracks in her own identity. She questioned the missing paperwork. She trusted the feeling that something was not right. And that instinct led her back to the family who had been searching since 1987. But the ending is not a simple happy ending. It is a reunion, but also a grief story. Because Carlina was found. Because she was found after her childhood had already passed. Her parents got their daughter back, but not the baby they lost. And Carlina got the truth. But the truth came with the weight of realizing that the life she knew had begun with a kidnapping. For 23 years, she had been a missing child. Only she did not know she was missing. Carlina White was kidnapped as a newborn and raised by the woman who had taken her. Years later, her own doubts helped uncover the truth. But the next case would take even longer to solve. Melissa Highsmith disappeared when she was just 21 months old. For more than 5 decades, her family searched. And when the answer finally came, it revealed that Melissa had been alive much closer to home than anyone expected. Story number 5. The Case of Melissa Highsmith. For Alta Apantenko, the disappearance began with an ordinary problem. She was a young mother in Fort Worth, Texas. She'd recently moved there, and she needed someone to watch her daughter while she worked. Her daughter, Melissa Highsmith, was 21 months old, still a toddler, too young to understand where she lived, who she belonged to, or what was about to happen. In August of 1971, Alta placed an ad in the newspaper looking for a babysitter. A woman answered the ad. At first, the woman was supposed to meet Alta at the restaurant where Alta worked, but she didn't show up. Then she called again. This time, she said she was still interested in the job. She said she had a big yard, and that she cared for other children, and to a young working mother who needed help. She sounded like a possible solution, so Alta hired her. On August 23, 1971, the woman came to pick up Melissa from Alta's apartment. Alta was at work, so Melissa was handed over by Alta's roommate. The woman looked presentable. She appeared calm. She was described as wearing white gloves, sunglasses, and a bonnet. Then she took Melissa with her, and she never brought her back. When the babysitter did not return, Alta called the police. But by then, Melissa was gone. The woman who had answered the newspaper ad had disappeared with her child. And from that day forward, Melissa Highsmith became a missing child. For her family, the years that followed were marked by the absence of a little girl who should have been growing up in their home. They had photographs, memories, and they had the date she disappeared, but they did not have Melissa. As the years passed, her family continued searching. Her mother, Alta, lived with the loss. Her father, Jeffrey Highsmith, lived with the same unanswered question. And Melissa's younger siblings grew up knowing they had an older sister they had never really known. To them, Melissa was both family and mystery. She was someone who belonged to them, but also someone missing from every ordinary moment. Birthdays passed, childhood passed, decades passed, and still there was no clear answer. No confirmed sighting, no return. No explanation for what happened after that woman walked out with Melissa. But while her biological family searched, Melissa was still alive. She wasn't even far away. In fact, she was still in the Fort Worth area, but she was growing up under another name. She was raised as Melanie. Later, she would come to be known as Melanie Walden. And for most of her life, she did not know she was Melissa Highsmith. She didn't know another family had been searching for her since 1971, and she didn't know that somewhere nearby, her baby pictures were still being kept by people who remembered her as the child who vanished. To the outside world, Melanie had a life, a name, a home, a family story, but it was not the story she had been born into. As she got older, parts of that life did not feel right. Melissa later described her childhood as unhappy. She said she was sheltered and told stories about why she was different. According to her, she was told she had been born at home and had brain damage. So later, she didn't understand why the woman raising her seemed to keep her so isolated. Eventually, as a teenager, she ran away. She left the home she had grown up in, and for many years after that, she had no contact with the people who raised her. But even then, she still didn't know the truth. She didn't know that her real name had once been printed on missing child posters. She didn't know that her family had built a search around her. She did not know that her disappearance had become one of Fort Worth's longest-running cold cases. For 51 years, Melissa's case remained unsolved. Then, in 2022, there was renewed attention. An anonymous tip suggested that Melissa might have been seen in Charleston, South Carolina. That tip did not turn out to be Melissa, but it brought new attention to the case. It pushed the family's search back into public view. And around that same time, the answer came from somewhere else entirely: DNA. Melissa's biological father, Jeffrey Highsmith, had submitted his DNA to 23andMe. The family later learned that the DNA database had connected him to children who appeared to be his grandchildren. Those children belonged to a woman named Melanie. The family began to understand what that might mean. If the DNA connection was right, then Melanie was not just a possible lead. She could very well be Melissa. The family reached out. At first, Melanie was skeptical. To her, these were strangers telling her something impossible, that she was not who she thought she was, that she had been kidnapped as a child, that another family had been looking for her for more than 5 decades. It was too much to accept immediately. But then her husband found a Facebook page the Highsmith family had created for Melissa. He saw the baby photos, the details, and slowly, Melanie began to wonder if the impossible story might be true. She agreed to take the DNA test, and the results confirmed what the family had hoped for. Melanie Walden was actually Melissa Highsmith. The missing toddler from 1971 had been found alive. She was 53 years old, and she had been living near the family who had searched for her almost her entire life. For Alta Apantenko, the moment was almost impossible to hold. The daughter she thought she might never see again was alive. For Jeffrey Highsmith, it meant meeting the child who had been taken before her family could ever be whole. For Melissa's siblings, it meant their missing sister was no longer just a name in the family's grief. She was real, she was alive, and she was coming home. But like many of these cases, the reunion was not so simple. It was joyful, but it was also painful, because Melissa had not been missing for a few days or a few months. She had been missing for 51 years. Her family did not get her childhood back. They did not get her first day of school, her teenage years, birthdays. Ordinary family memories had been stolen quietly, 1 year at a time. And Melissa could not simply step back into the life she would have had. She had already lived another life. She had memories from that life, pain from that life, a name from that life. And now she had to absorb the truth that the story she had been given was not the truth at all. After the family's private DNA discovery, Fort Worth police conducted their own DNA testing. In May of 2023, police officially confirmed Melissa Highsmith's identity. But legally, the case had one more painful complication. The criminal statute of limitations had expired. That meant that prosecution for the original abduction might no longer be possible. Still, police said they would continue looking for information about what happened. For Melissa, the legal ending was not a courtroom conviction. It was the restoration of her name. In May of 2023, she went to court in Tarrant County, Texas. The woman who had lived for decades as Melanie Walden legally changed her name back to Melissa Highsmith. Her biological parents were with her. Her family was there. And in that courtroom, at least one piece of what had been taken from her was returned: her name. In the end, Melissa was found through DNA. But what brought her home was also the fact that her family never allowed her to be forgotten. The search for a missing child is defined by hope. But these stories reveal a deeper, more complicated truth. When the child is finally found, the greatest loss is the lifetime of moments that can never be returned. The mystery may be solved, but the years are still gone. What did you think of these incredible disappearances? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to keep exploring the darkest solved cases in history, subscribe to Mysterious 5 for more. Thanks again to Mysterious 5 for having me on the channel today. I hope you enjoyed the stories and my read. If you like the sound of my voice and you want to hear more of my writing and narrations, hop over to the Mr. X Dreams YouTube channel and check out some of my stuff. Hope to see you there. Take care, friends.